Oh my goodness, this was so much fun. This was so much fun. Valentina Patton is this really beautiful woman I met on a rock in Puerto Vallarta. And
That's it.
and I just knew I wanted to get to know her, and I did. And I put her on the spot and asked her to be on a podcast, and sure enough, she showed up. So we had a
That's
beautiful
amazing.
discussion about being a new mom.
Yeah, and all the choices and all the decisions. And it's just remarkable. Debbie and I just were really so impressed with the very conscious, intentional, mindful way that she is approaching her life, motherhood, her marriage. And it's not a grind, like she's doing it beautifully and naturally and healing old ways of doing things and stepping into something beautiful. And that was wonderful to hear about.
My heart feels
She's delightful.
Yes, my heart feels warm, and I have hope
Yeah.
for those moms in the future. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes to motherhood.
The world is a lot right now. Are you feeling it? We all need new tools to help us walk through the chaos with grace, ease, and compassion for each other and for ourselves. In this podcast, you'll hear from parents, educators, and other experts who can bring perspective to the monumental job of parenting. It's time to level up and be warriors for our kids and our communities. This is the Warrior Parent Podcast. I'm Marci Mitchell.
And I'm Debbie DiManno. As parents, we understand that it really does take a village to raise our kids. We hope that this podcast serves to create and support that community for you. Join us as we discuss and practice our core tools, which are proven mind-body techniques that can be used by anyone to improve your life on a daily basis.
Welcome back to the Warrior Parent Podcast. Thank you for joining us today. We're really happy that you're here. And today we're speaking with Valentina Patton, who was born in Colombia, but spent most of her life in England. She now lives in Colorado with her husband and her beautiful daughter, and she's recently transitioned to becoming a full-time parent after being in the tech industry for almost a decade. So we're going to talk a little bit about that whole topic around especially for moms, having your career and then what's next and how we deal with it. So we're really glad to have you here, Valentina. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. So I have a fun little story to tell about Valentina. So my husband and I were recently on a little work vacay, and we were in a little place north of Puerto Vallarta called Punta Mita. And my husband and I were out doing a little yoga out on a rock in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
As
and
you do.
and Valentina and I were laying on the ground, like hitting each other while we're on the rock trying to do yoga. And she's probably laughing at me, the OG, trying to keep up with her. But anyway, we chatted and we spent a little bit of time, and I just fell in love with her. I fell in love with her story, and she told me about the fact that she has this beautiful new baby. And I asked her, like, wow, how are you doing? How are you doing things with work and balance? And she said, well, actually, I think I'm giving up my career. And you can see the sort of look on her face of like, oh my God, am I really doing this? Or what have I
Right.
done? Or right. So anyway, Marci and I have not had an opportunity to interview a new mom. And so I hooked her up. I said, we're going to do a podcast. So here we are. She's back in Colorado where it's nice and cold, and we're going to have a beautiful conversation with Valentina. So Valentina, give us a little background around where you grew up, maybe how you met your husband, and
Yeah,
your career and how you got here having this new baby.
amazing. Yeah. I was born in Colombia, but my family moved to London when I was 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I was still pretty young, and I spent the next 20 years of my life in London. And that's where my mom and my brothers and everyone's still there. And then destiny brought me to my husband in Europe. So we're on a friend's trip in Amsterdam. And yeah, we just I know it's cheesy to say, it was kind of like the spark was just immediately there. You know, there was just no that. I saw him from across the room, and I was like, "There's something about that guy." And I'm sure it was. Well, I hope it was reciprocated.
Clearly.
But yeah. But anyway, so that's how we met. We actually worked for the same company. Well, I don't work for that company anymore. But yeah, this was 8 years ago, and then I met my husband. So he ended up, he was based out of California, and he ended up moving all the way to London. Yeah, and we spent 5 years in London. He hated London. He was like, "This is not for me. It's too cold, gloomy, and whatnot." But anyway, fast forward, and we moved out here in Colorado. Well, we're in Denver, and we have been here for almost 4 years now, and we love it. We love it out here. And we got married the same year we got here. We were like, "Yay, let's just let's just do it." We decided to elope, so we just had like let's go to the Rocky Mountains. Let's just like get married, just the two of us. And it was nice. It was so much fun. Yeah.
So
then we had a baby.
You had talked about getting married, but it was during COVID, right? So you went through this whole thing with COVID.
We had a COVID engagement. Yeah. So we got engaged during COVID, right, kind of like at the beginning. And then we had talked about, I think our idea was to like elope. So we, getting our families together. My family is all over Colombia, Chile, Canada. Yeah.
Yes.
And endless countries. And so we had always had this idea that it would be so romantic, just to get married and then, do it the two of us and like, don't tell anyone and just kind of like show up married. And we were actually initially going to do it in Denmark. But then COVID happened and it was all crazy and the borders closed. And so we actually couldn't get into Denmark. And we actually got the marriage. We were working on our marriage license in Denmark. So we already started all that process. Yeah. We were really deep into this process. And so, but it didn't work out. And then we ended up just, moving out here. Yeah. And then it just felt right. And we're like, we love this place. It feels like the right time. We'd already been together for 5 years. And we had a beautiful, beautiful ceremony in Estes Park. Yeah.
Everything
Estes Park. That's beautiful.
Everything happens for a reason, right?
I know.
Yeah.
So your baby she's 8 months old? Is that right? Or 10?
She's 9 months today. So
today.
Today she was born on the 7th of June. Okay. And so 9 months ago now. Wow. How time flies! Oh my God, I have a 9-month baby who's almost crawling.
So talk a little bit about, because you had a career, and it sounds to me like it was you had kind of a big job. You were really in a big career. Talk a little bit about what that was like before having the baby.
For sure, yeah. So I worked for a company called Palantir. So this is in the tech industry. I joined in 2015, so almost 10 years ago. But most recently I was essentially working as an operations analyst for product development. So I was working directly with the head of engineering, and I was responsible for all of resourcing for all the product teams in our largest GD org. So essentially staffing, people development, all headcount, etc. And I was also, I'm actually really proud of this, I was also responsible for creating this dashboard that integrate all our operational workflows for resourcing, and it's now fully deployed across the company and used by all the other business areas. So that was super cool.
Done.
And then, but before that, I was the head of workplace within the same company. So I was responsible for the global office portfolio and essentially like overseeing the global team. But I started out as an office coordinator. So I was actually an office coordinator when I started out, and I guess, had a pretty cool and crazy career trajectory.
That's amazing.
So this is a big transition.
Yes.
Because you just recently stopped working. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
And you're a full-time mom. So
talk about that.
How does that feel?
Because that's,
my goodness.
Deb and I both kind of had that similar experiences with that, but similar. It's something that I feel like every mom, you have to look at that, unless, there, maybe you weren't working before, but no matter what you were doing before, we know that having a baby changes everything. And this baby comes from literally from within us. And this, so it's not to downplay dad's connections with their kids or any of that, but there is just something, there's a shift, there's a realization, there's a lot of, it's a very big decision about how am I going to show up now that I have this baby? Because no matter what, it's going to change your life from no baby to baby is a huge transition.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, quite honestly, the whole journey to, thinking about like career and the motherhood really started when we were trying to conceive. We were trying to conceive, and at that point I was like really in the thick of like my job, and really enjoying it, and it was like super hard and so much potential for growth, etc. And I really had to like take a hard look at my life and just think, is this like work-life balance? Is this sustainable? And also like, I need to reduce my stress levels if I want to get pregnant,
Right.
to begin with,
So just getting pregnant, getting pregnant.
Yeah. And we really wanted a baby, we had decided together, like, we just can't wait to be parents. And so we kind of started there, and like, what changes do I need to implement in my life in order to like, one, get pregnant, and two, just kind of like set myself up for success as a parent.
Right.
And one of the things that my husband and I talked about was doing couples therapy. And we've never done it before. And, we always felt like, obviously like every relationship, there's been ups and downs and, conflict and everything. But, I feel like we were in a good place at that point, and so it was more like, let's go to couples therapy because we want to keep, this relationship great, but also just like, have a tool, more tools in a toolbox to be able to like tackle the stresses of parenthood and like all the things that like are going to come up that, we just don't know about, because we're so new to this. And so that's one of the first steps that we took toward, kind of like learning more about each other and like, just again, thinking about like, how do we provide a safe space and a good, environment for a child and our baby who we're going to love so much. Wow. Yeah. So, yeah.
So, yay, Marci and I are like, bravo. Like being
it's
proactive.
Very mindful. We love that.
And conscious parenting. I don't know if you've heard any of those podcasts, but like, that's so beautiful to have like a plan about how you're going to raise this child and bring this child into a conscious environment and a relationship where mother and father are able to communicate and share values about how they're raised a child. Like, dang, that's so freaking awesome.
It is.
Yeah. And and at the time, like I said, we quite honestly were like, our relationship's amazing, and you end up uncovering things that like you actually like think were a big deal. And like I think one of the things that like we've actually implemented in a relationship is something called the State of the Union, and that's something completely new to us. And I said the concept is basically like how you can do weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, but basically you just have a check-in where you're
check-in.
You just have a check-in and you say, hi, how are you doing? And, you share like a few gratitudes. And then you also, bring up, is there any conflict, anything to process, anything where, we want to kind of slow down and really give it some time to like, and then something you're looking forward to. And so we actually do it weekly, which sounds like overkill, but it really isn't. Not for us anyway. For us, So we share gratitude, and that's just so nice because all week I'm kind of looking forward to like, ooh, he just made dinner. I'm just gonna remember that for my gratitude on Sunday, and vice versa. I'm also like thinking like, what is he gonna be grateful for that, And sometimes he totally surprises me with like, oh, I didn't realize that small little thing that I did. Just had such a big impact. For him.
It's so true. It can be the smallest things. This is so beautiful. I love this State of the Union. But it's these little things that's what our lives are made up of, these small moments. And it often what Brene Brown, and she's quoting someone else, but she's talks about sliding door moments, like in the marriage or relationship, where there's a moment where you can you can reach out and connect and see the person and be there for them, or you can be like, I'm busy right now. And that's the sliding door. So do you build more connection? Do you work towards the relationship, or do you just, and it's not that you're like walking away from it, although that's that's kind of what happens, but it's more just like, oh, not right now, or I just don't have, like, it's, but it can be a small thing, of just being like, hey, are you okay? You seem like something's up, versus like in your head, you're like, God, I want to watch this show, or I need to finish this report, or whatever the thing is. Those little moments where you choose the person again and again, and then that feels so good to them.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
So tell us about your, like, okay, so you basically have the most beautiful start of having a baby that I ever heard. Honestly, I'm thinking to myself about my own situation, going, oh my God, like what I would have given to have that. But
Yeah.
but even so, you had some time off to have the baby, and
Yeah.
then did you go back? Did you go back and try to go back, and then
Yeah.
what happened? What ultimately got you to this place of making a decision?
For sure, yeah. So yeah, so I was very lucky to have 6 months of maternity leave. So that was like incredible. I mean, incredible by American standards.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Right.
In the UK, I would have had a year off, but
Yes.
you know, I'm grateful that I had the 6 months, and you know, that was really good. And then when it was getting closer and closer to the time of like going back to work, I just was going through these like so many mixed emotions. You know, one day I'd kind of wake up and be like, no, I'm definitely going back to work. And then the next day I'd be with my baby and I'll be like, I can't leave it's impossible, right? And so on one hand, obviously I love my job. Again, like it's just so much fun, and I'd love doing what I was doing. And then on the other hand, my baby and wanting to show up for my baby. And so they're very conflicting, right? And there's this fear of losing out on both directions, right? Like, oh my God, am I losing out on like a career? Am I committing career suicide? Like, my goodness, like it's so daunting to like, work. And like, it was a grind. Like I worked so hard to get to where I got to. So, and then at the, kind of in the same vein, wanting to like miss out on like my baby growing up and wanting to really be there for my baby. So I couldn't decide. Essentially, I was just like, this is just too much. And I, talking to my husband, talking to our therapist, they just said, why don't you just go back? And my return date was like end of the year, kind of like right before the holidays. Just go back. Your company has been pretty good. Your team has been pretty good. Just, be honest that you're still figuring out, childcare, which is actually true. I was actually trying to figure out daycare versus full-time nanny type of situation. So I said, okay, fine. I'm going to go back and just see what happens. And so I did. And, I was actually going to go back to a different role because 6 months is a long time. But it would have been kind of something in the finance space, which would have been pretty interesting, quite honestly. And I would have been super open to a change like that. And then while I was kind of like catching up with people and like, just going through the motions, my heart was just so heavy, right? Like there was just something pulling me. I just can't explain it, right? It was just like, I was like kind of stressing, it was kind of like, I really wanted to make a good impression with my coworkers, and like I wanted them to know, hey, I'm here and I'm back, and and I'm a mom, but don't worry, I'm back. You've got me. And so like you're so worried about making this good impression.
So your brain is in one place and your heart is in completely another, right? Your heart's just feeling broken, right?
Totally. And also,
Hey, we just wanted to take a quick moment to tell you about something very exciting that Debbie and I and our team have been working on for literally years. And that is our Cour Tools app, which is now available at the Google Play Store and at the Apple Store. And you can sign up for it now and you will get access to all the tools we've been talking about on the podcast.
And if you're an early adopter of Cour Tools, you can get a VIP price for $49 for a lifetime. That's
lifetime.
Right.
Buy it once and we'll keep updating it too.
Yes, yes. So we're super excited about this. Go to Apple Store, go to Google Play, and purchase it now.
Cour Tools, COUR, capital TOOLS.
Go get it.
All the while trying to make a good impression, and then I'm
Yeah.
trying to breastfeed and trying to navigate also what that's like, and
Yeah.
breastfeeding has its host of challenges too, right?
Right.
And for me, it hasn't been like it's been a pretty bumpy ride.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I just, the pull was just heavier toward my baby, and ultimately, so basically I had like 2 or 3 weeks where I was back at work, and then we had the holiday break, and I thought, okay, let me take the time off, and like really zoom out, because the company was closed. We had a couple of weeks off, so I really zoomed out, and I thought, let me take a step back and actually, let's not think about work or anything. Let me actually think about what my support system looks like. And so there were kind of a few key categories that I could think of. But okay, we've already covered my husband and my relationship. Like, how's that doing? And I was like, feeling great. I think that we have a strong partnership, great communication. He's such a dedicated dad. Like, it's just so endearing and so wonderful. It makes me want to cry. It's just so wonderful to see your husband,
It is.
take that fatherhood role. But yeah, so it's, my partnership feeling really good, feeling so much trust in my husband and his ability to be a dad. And then I thought, okay, what about secondary caregivers? Do I have a trusted, who's my tribe, and do I have trusted people that could actually also take care of my child? Because we want a date night, or because I need a day off, or whatever that might be. And so, okay, let's look at that. We do have some trusted babysitters. We have, actually, I now have a nanny who is going to help me weekly, which is great, so I can get a day off. But anyway, looking at that and feeling like, okay, yeah, we have people we trust. And what about community, right? Do I have community? And not just for the social aspect, but also just as a support network for myself as a new mom.
Yeah.
And so I have this amazing group of moms. We all met through this network called Mamistad. And we're all local, and we all met when we were pregnant, and all our babies are like a month apart, and like they're all born between like March and June, and it's like 10 or 11 of us, and we're just so active, and it's been such a joy to just be a part of this network, and we've just been we're there for each other, we've birth, and again, being a
that's so important. That circle of women is so important. When you're a new mom, or I know for me, we all have our own experiences, but for me, I was very isolated when I first had my kids, not in the very beginning because my mom was around and family, but shortly after. So I had my son, and then had my second child, basically just over a year later. And then 6 months later, we moved to Washington for my husband's job. And that's where I didn't know anybody. He was working really long hours, and that was a really hard time for me home with these 2 really young children, breastfeeding, diapers, all the stuff. And boy, I wish I'd had that. I tried to kind of find it, but it's hard when, like, you've been so mindful. You've been in this place, which is lovely. I love to see this, of setting things up and being really out in front of it. I was much more like, okay, now what do I do? Now what I do? And
winging it.
Winging it.
Yeah.
For sure. Even, even when I was ready to have a baby. I was like Marissa Tomei and my cousin Vinny with my biological clock was ticking. I was craving a baby, but I was on active duty, and my husband and I were engaged. We were planning our wedding, and then I got pregnant, which was great. I was excited, but even there, I was winging it for the whole time. And so just that, having that circle of women would have been huge for me, because I still remember that as a really tough time. And I had I was, like I said, I was on active duty in the Army when I got pregnant. So I had to have that choice too. I was kind of like, luckily with the Army, that is one thing as a woman. If you're pregnant, you can get out, because you have commitments with the Army. You might be 4 years or whatever, but That's one of the things. It's like a get out of jail free
Yeah.
card if you want.
I never knew that, actually.
Yeah,
Oh,
if you're
yeah.
pregnant, you can make that choice and say, I'm choosing to get off active
Yeah.
duty. And I only had another, I think I had another year on because I had a scholarship, so I had an 8-year obligation. So I had another, maybe it was even a half year, but that was a choice for sure to get out of the military because I knew I didn't want to be able to be called away. Like, okay, we're going to send you here for 6 months like that. I knew I couldn't do that, but I didn't necessarily know I wasn't going to work. I wasn't clear on that, but I had that once having my baby and being home with him. And I didn't have 6 months, but I think I had 6 weeks that was left from my military. So it was like I was still getting paid. So I did have that. But during that time, I remember thinking about my husband, like, how does he leave the house every morning? And like with the baby, I'm like, how does he leave this baby? Like, I can't even imagine. And so that was where I was like, okay, I don't know what it's going to take. And for us, it took going into debt, but I'm not leaving this baby. Like I'm just gonna stay. I can't. Like I couldn't
Yeah.
conceive of it. And I do want to say this talk is not any judgment for women who do go back to work, women who stay home, women who find the mix. Like this is the whole point is being empowered to make the choice that works for you and for your
Yeah.
family. So there's none of that. There's
Yeah.
not. And Debbie can speak to, having feeling obligated or feeling, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what is it like when you're not able or you're not, for some people, this is not what you choose. You want to go back to that job. And so there's no judgment here, but we're sharing our own experiences. And we know that when we share our stories, that there's people who are like, oh, they get the connection. So
Yeah. For me, like I find what's so fascinating about Valentina's story is just like when Marci and I have conversations with people now, we talk about tools, right? We talk
yeah,
about communication, we talk about community, we talk about connection, we talk
yeah,
about all these things, but to speak with someone who's actually thought about consciously about all these things and making a decision about
yeah,
how to do this. Now, granted, we've had some very difficult situations with some other stories like just this week that will take your breath away.
right,
So you were fortunate to be in that situation, and not everyone is,
Yeah.
right?
right,
And it can be incredibly, incredibly stressful, depending on finances, right? And
right.
for me, I kind of didn't have a choice. I was the breadwinner, and so I was able to take 6 months off. I kind of quasi went back part-time, but then ultimately had to go back full time and get my kids raised and be the breadwinner for the family. And I still feel pretty resentful about that, I have to say. Pretty resentful. But, I had a big fucking career and lots of money and all the things. And interestingly enough, on the back end of it, I would say that my kids would say, I'm really proud of my mom.
Mm,
I'm really
yeah,
proud of my mom for
yeah, they are. I
who.
see that. I've heard that from them. So that is lovely.
Yeah, my kids are in their 20s now, but they understand what I did and the sacrifices that I had to
Mm,
make. So hopefully they're not going back to the therapist like, oh, my mom was never there. I had great nannies. I had really good, great nannies, but I missed a lot. I missed a lot.
yeah,
And I could start crying having that conversation.
yeah,
So I think it is it's very personal.
It is.
yes. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I did have this like wonderful network of like, moms and women, but my family isn't here, and
Yeah.
I think that was a catalyst for really, being proactive about like seeking, these important connections. Because yeah,
Hmm.
at the beginning of my pregnancy, I was so sick. Oh my goodness. I
Yeah.
had a tough first trimester, and I felt
Mm,
lonely, and I felt so lonely, and
yeah.
I really craved my friends, my closest friends and my closest family, and they're all overseas, right? My
Yes.
Yeah.
closest, I think, on my husband's side, our closest family members are in California, Southern California, and
Hmm.
I have an aunt in Toronto and one in Georgia, but still, it's
No,
not.
none of that's
There's
close.
some
They're
planet.
not
Yeah.
they're not showing up to babysit. Yes.
Yeah. Or have a cup of
Yeah,
tea with
yeah,
you or hold your hand or
right,
yeah.
right, right, yeah.
So
And so
important.
that was really like what, and I have to really give my husband a shout out here, because he's always been so, I think he's always so concerned with like my happiness,
Oh,
and
that's
really
lovely.
wanting to like create such a good life for myself.
Yeah.
And I really love him for that. And he's always been really proactive with like, with the moms group. He was the one that was like, I was expressing my loneliness and like, oh, this is so hard, and it was sad. I had
Yeah.
moments. I had pretty emotional moments during that time, and he was the one that really was like, here's these 3 like networks you can join, and I
Yeah.
really think you should do this, and he was so encouraging, and I'm so glad that I had him there to kind of like shepherd me to here's like some networks
Yep.
you can explore.
What's your
But
husband's name?
his name is Casey.
Casey. We're going to give big shout out to Casey for,
Yay!
yes, being tuned
Go
in to
dads,
your
go
Yeah.
partners.
dads.
Yeah, tuned into your
Yes.
partner's well-being and
Yeah.
seeing that and seeking a way to help without trying to fix it for them, but being there to say, "Oh, I see you're lonely. Let's look at some things. Let me,
Mhm.
what do you need? How can I show
Yeah,
up for you?" That's just
Yeah.
beautiful. And that's
Well,
it
well
really
done. Well
is.
done, Casey.
yes, I think that the support is everything, right? Like
Yeah.
even when I think about those days when I went back to work, and I had a jet setting job. So I was flying and I was in a suit like every day. And so I would do my best to be participating with my kids as much as I could. Like most of the time I would show up at the elementary school in my power suit and I would get these looks from moms. Like most of the people, moms in my neighborhood were not working.
Yeah.
And that felt horrible. That felt horrible. They're looking at me like, oh, she shows up in her power business suit. I was a little bit like, yeah, uh-huh. Because I don't have a choice about this. And I was up at 3 o'clock this morning to catch a plane to get here to be for this. And right. And
Mm,
so I think there's this
Mhm.
piece about women supporting each other, no matter what, no matter which
yes.
side of this story you're on, because we all have a very different story. And generationally, it's different too. Like back in the 1950s, only about a third of the moms were working. We're now
Mhm.
it's 80% of moms are working. So it's a
Yeah.
very,
Yeah.
very different dynamic. The stress level, and the level of wellness is low as a result. I mean, many times I would
Mhm.
have said, I had end up with an autoimmune issue, like all kinds
Wow.
of things. And I used to tell people, I don't think women's bodies were really built to do all these things at the same
Yeah.
time. To carry the baby, to breastfeed the baby. I was breastfeeding over in the side of the road with my pump in the backseat of my car to get enough milk for my kids because I was determined that 1 year my kids are going to have breast milk.
Yeah.
So the level of stress um is incredible. And then you think,
Yeah.
oh, like your kids are not feeling that because they are, because you come
Yeah.
home and how can you be like, it was a perfect day. Here I
Yeah.
am for you. Lucky I had a
Yeah.
nanny who, when I would come home from whatever trip, she always had a candle burning when I showed up at the house. And that was sort of my cue to like, okay, you need to slow down. You need to take a
Yeah.
breath,
Take
slow
a
down.
breath.
You're in
Take
the
a breath.
house now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I just had this thought. I don't know. I get the impression that like when we do decide as moms, when we do decide like we're gonna, leave our career and be a full-time mom,
Yeah.
I feel like people, and again, this might be my impression, but
Yeah.
it's almost perceived as like a demotion. And I kind of just want to say,
Yes.
hey, I actually got promoted. I promoted
Yes.
myself to being a mom, and
Yes.
I get to do this full time. What a
Yes.
privilege!
It
Like I just
is.
kind of just wanted that. I wanted to say that
Yes.
because
Thank you for saying that, Valentina.
Thank
That
yeah,
is
you.
true. There's, yeah,
Yeah.
and
It's
it's
it
such a
is.
joy, and I show up for
It
my
is a joy.
family, and like I get to focus on my family and my baby girl, who like amazing, and teaching me so much about patience, and
Yes.
Yes.
testing me every day. But
Yes.
yeah, I absolutely, the way I see it is I absolutely got promoted, and like this
Yes.
is the best promotion I've ever had.
Man,
Yes. I love that.
I love that because it is a thankless job most
Yeah.
of the time,
Yeah, it's
right?
hard. it's really hard sometimes, especially
that
going
first
from,
year. In that first
yeah,
year.
and especially going, like, there's a whole nother thing about going from this job and you're going out to lunch and you're having friends and you go to the bathroom and nobody's there. You can close the door, things
Yes.
like that, to having you have nothing that's just yours anymore. It's all for the kids and you do your best. But like you're eating the crust of the toast because you don't have time to
They
make
didn't.
something. What do they not eat? Okay, I'm going to eat that. There's my lunch. And all of
Yeah.
that trying to.
Mhm.
So it's a lot. And I agree with you. It is a promotion. It's just a wonderful, however you do
Yeah.
it, however you're doing it
Yeah.
out there, we see you and we know you're doing your best and you're doing great.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
try
And
to
It's a hard
enjoy it.
job.
That's the other thing
yes.
from the older women in the room. Try to enjoy it. It goes so fast. Goes so
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
and this world needs more conscious children, right? Let's
Yes.
just be clear about
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
this idea that you've taken this job and this role of not only being a mom, but being a spouse and being a partner, so
Yeah.
very
You're mindfully
seriously.
creating this beautiful life.
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
that your kids are coming up in that. It's
Yeah.
really important work.
Yeah, it
Kudos.
is.
Kudos,
Thank
Yay.
you.
Valentina.
Yay. No, I love it. It is hard.
Yeah.
It is hard. I don't,
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
I don't want to, say otherwise. It's a grind.
Yeah.
It's a different type of grind. You have some lows, you have pretty hard
Yes.
days, but then you have pretty
Yeah.
amazing days too, where you're like,
Yes.
this is just the best,
Yes.
and like, going back to like the I guess the idea of a promotion, like, the way I see it is, if I want to go back to work, I don't know when that is. I don't know the timeline. I don't
Yeah.
have a timeline.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful. Feel very fortunate that we can do this, and like, we can be a single income household.
Yeah.
So I feel so fortunate and so grateful. But motherhood is also teaching me so many skills, and patience, ruthless prioritization. There's just so many things that I'm still no, seriously, like,
Yeah.
I remember, naps are always like, she's down for a nap, like, it could be half an hour, it could be an hour, but I've had
What
to
do I do
learn the
with this
hard way.
precious time?
Exactly. And I've had to learn the hard way, like, do not just spend that precious time working, because
Yeah.
then it'll get to the end of the day and you're going to be flat out,
Got nothing
and your
left.
husband gets home from work and you're not going to really be able to meet him,
Yeah.
and like spend some quality time, which is so important for your marriage and
Yes,
your
absolutely.
partnership. So I've had to learn the hard way to
Yeah.
really slow down and like have moments of stillness.
Yes.
When the baby's sleeping, and really ignore the clutter, ignore everything.
Oh my
Nothing is
God.
urgent.
Good for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
The self-care,
Yeah.
right?
So much time I
Yeah.
spent needlessly cleaning and
Oh,
organizing and
Yes.
trying to make the
It is
world
hard.
perfect, because
It's
that
very
was,
hard for me. Believe me, it's
let
so
it
hard for
go.
me.
Let it
Yeah.
go.
Yes.
Oh,
Marci and I have stopped cleaning officially.
cleaning sucks. It just gets dirty again.
Yes. Who cares? Who cares? Right.
That's my
Yes.
goal. That is my goal.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Unfortunately, I think we're out of time,
Yeah.
Valentina. I so want to stay in touch with you, and
Yeah.
I want you to check in with us. And if there's new milestones or things you want to share, things that you've
Yes.
learned, yeah, you're our one new mom that
Yay.
we got to keep tabs on now. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing your story. I think you can inspire
Beautiful.
lots of moms
Thank-
right now.
I'm glad you guys met on a rock
Yes,
doing
We
yoga.
did. Yes.
yes.
Everything happens for a reason.
Everything happens for a reason. Thank you for having
Yes.
me. I think the work you're doing
thank
is so
you.
important. So keep doing the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, warrior moms. As we started this podcast, we had determined that part of what we were going to do is to create a community. So we have decided to take it to another level, and we have started our own Facebook community in addition to the Warrior Parent podcast, and it's called
From Chaos to Calm, a sanctuary for moms. Here's what it looks like. It's on Facebook right now. please go and join it. And just to let you know, we're going to create our Blue Sky accounts right now. We're getting prepared as we watch this weird stuff go on in America. So we may be shifting the whole group to Blue Sky. Just be aware that we got you. You're going to start here. If this turns out to be not a safe place anymore on Facebook, then we will shift over. But what we're creating is a safe space where moms can show up and get information, get support, talk to each other about the things you're going through with your kids, the things you went through with your kids, maybe get some advice from moms, but also other experts. We're going to invite all of our guests and experts to join the group. I hope you will too. This is a place where you can show up and be seen and be heard and be safe. Mom's got you.
Nobody trusts anyone more than moms. So let's do this.
And now for your core mental health break. This is your opportunity to take a moment to support your mental wellness, your peace of mind, your own ease and grace. Take some time every day to support your mental health. You deserve it, and it matters.
Today we're going to journal, and here is your journaling prompt. If I could go anywhere in the world, I would go. Take a few moments, journal about where you would go, feel it, create it, really think about what would serve you and uplift you. If I could go anywhere in the world, I would go. Enjoy your journaling.
Thanks for listening to the Warrior Parent Podcast, which is a production of our nonprofit, Cour Experience, who also creates and distributes Cour tools. You can find us at courexperience.org. Make sure you join us next week for another informative conversation to help you and your family show up mindfully, purposefully, and joyfully with each other and in your community.
Our Cour Tools platform consists of a number of proven tools and techniques that are designed to reduce stress, anxiety, and overwhelm in spite of what's going on in your world. We want to thank Samuel Hale, LLC, for sponsoring this podcast. Technical and marketing support comes from Inspire Your Brand. Our podcast editor is Justin Beeden. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of the hosts, the producers, or the financial supporters. I'm Debbie DiManno.
And I'm Marci Mitchell. Thanks for listening. If you resonate with the idea of creating a community to help support kids and families, won't you join us by following the podcast and sharing this episode? You can even write a review. It truly does take a village, and we appreciate you.